Space transportation technology is set to trigger a revolution in the military's capabilities to defend the United States and its allies, as well as inflict mayhem and death on an adversary attempting to wage war on the United States. The US military is investing funds to investigate how SpaceX's Starship rocket could be used to transport 100 tons of freight, personnel, and supplies across the globe in minutes. SpaceX is a corporation that specializes in giving access to space via its series of rocket ships, and is offering the US Army its Starship rocket as a means of fast-moving soldiers and supplies overseas. The corporation also feels that its Starlink internet service, which is available all around the world, could be useful to the Army as well. While the prospect of cheap wireless internet for the Army is appealing, its partnership with SpaceX and its Starship is the best of deals that we've seen in recent years. What does this alliance mean for SpaceX, and what is the US military's strategy for the Starship's capabilities? Is this a strategy for wreaking havoc on other countries, or is it a way to defend the country from others? This video will answer all these questions as well as others. At its Texas facility, SpaceX has been testing Starship prototypes, most recently landing and recovering prototype SN-15 following a high-altitude flight test. While SpaceX is attempting a feat no other rocket has accomplished, quickly reusing rockets to make spaceflight more like air travel rather than the traditional approach of discarding the rocket after launch, the most recent high-altitude flight test was the first to end without the prototype exploding. SpaceX's Starship is the company's most ambitious and largest endeavor yet. The Starship spacecraft and the Super Heavy rocket are combined to become Starship. The spacecraft-rocket combination has the capability of lifting 110 tons of payload into low Earth orbit. The C-17 Globemaster III transport plane of the United States Air Force has a higher tonnage, but SpaceX believes the rocket could be used for point-to-point space transportation, delivering people and freight between any two sites on Earth in addition to launching cargo into space. Point-to-point space travel is a mode of transportation in which a rocket is launched into space and then returns to a different site, theoretically allowing goods or people to be transported from one side of the Earth to the other in less than an hour. A point-to-point Starship would function similarly to a ballistic missile. Once launched, it would accelerate into low Earth orbit before rocketing to a distant landing site. At around 18,000 miles per hour, a Starship would be significantly faster than any existing transportation system. Like a nuclear bomb, the Starship spaceship would deorbit over its target but land safely thanks to its rocket engines. With acceleration and deacceleration on both ends, a trip from Nebraska to the United Arab Emirates would take around half an hour. The Starship's role as a point-to-point cargo mover could be only the beginning of the SpaceX rocket ship's missions. Having the ability to supply supplies to any location in the world in less than an hour would undoubtedly benefit the military. However, making the Starship work as a cargo ship would present significant challenges. A single insurgent with a ground-to-air missile could make a landing a conflagration. The Motley Fool, a private investment advisory firm, is extremely optimistic about the Starship's military capabilities. The SpaceX rocket ship might be used for a range of military missions, ranging from low Earth orbit to near the Moon, according to the corporation. Starship might be employed as a transportable, adaptable reconnaissance platform with 6 vacuum-optimized Raptor engines to get it where it needs to go. In times of war, the SpaceX Starship might be used to strike enemy space assets and defend American satellites and other space-based installations, among other military objectives. The rocket ship may refuel American satellites, allowing them to continue to operate for longer periods. It could even be used to assist in the removal of debris from space. As a result, the Space Force would evolve from a small group of people manning consoles and holding planning meetings to a full-fledged military fighting force. The Starship is the vehicle for SpaceX CEO Elon Musk's dream of establishing a colony on Mars. Elon Musk envisions the rocket ship transporting residents and the goods they'll need to survive to Mars, establishing a new branch of human civilization there. NASA has already hired SpaceX to build a lunar landing version of the Starship that will return passengers to the Moon as soon as 2024. Elon Musk's rivals, such as Jeff Bezos of Blue Origin, have been enraged by the election, as have some members of Congress. But both parties are to blame for their loss, don't you think? Blue Origin for providing a subpar design, and Congress for underfunding the Human Landing System project. As we said, Starship might be used by the US Army to transport critical troops and supplies from the continental US to a remote base abroad. A Starship may carry up to 100 people, or roughly an infantry company, along with armament. It could theoretically transport an M1A2 Abrams tank, as well as ammo, crew, and fuel. The Army is also likely to become interested in the Starlink internet satellite system. To deliver global broadband internet, Starlink proposes to launch 12,000 satellites into low Earth orbit. That's a compelling proposition for any worldwide organization, especially the United States Army. It could be beneficial to have a single network that handles such messages. It was unavoidable that commercial space and the military have a partnership, especially one that extends beyond satellite launch services. You would think it's too soon for the Army to sign contracts for a fleet of olive-drab starships, but it's not. The US military is expanding a tiny development program that aims to use reusable rockets, such as those being developed by SpaceX, to carry goods to any location on the planet swiftly. The United States Space Force will lead the experimental initiative, dubbed Rocket Cargo. The program will investigate and assist in the development of capabilities such as landing a rocket on a wide range of non-traditional materials and surfaces, designing a rocket cargo bay and logistics for rapid loading and unloading, and airdropping cargo from the rocket after re-entry in order to service locations where a rocket or aircraft cannot possibly land. The Air Force proposed a nearly $50 million budget for rocket cargo in 2022 to continue the study concept work it started last year, with minor contracts to SpaceX and Exploration Architecture Corporation, XARC. The Starship rockets that SpaceX is building are aptly named, as the military program will examine completely reusable private rockets capable of launching between 30 and 100 tons. Starship is currently the only rocket in development that intends to be both reusable and capable of launching that much mass. Additionally, the Air Force is open to considering companies that have not yet developed a point-to-point, fully reusable capability for rocket cargo. The introduction of new modes of transportation for people and freight has typically defined military technology advancement. The 16th century racing galleons evolved into the frigates and line ships that defined naval combat in the 18th and early 19th centuries. The dreadnoughts of the early 20th century were made possible by the steam engine and iron and steel armor. Nuclear power is used in modern warships. Air travel has ushered in a similar progression, from World War I's powered kites to current planes capable of delivering damage and death from thousands of miles distant. Now, space transportation technology is set to trigger a similar revolution in the military's capabilities to defend the United States and its allies, as well as inflict mayhem and death on any adversary attempting to wage war on the United States. The Starship will be employed by a military force that Elon Musk once compared to Starfleet, the fictional service depicted in the Star Trek television episodes and films. In whichever afterlife one imagines Gene Roddenberry inhabiting, the concept would most likely bring a grin to his face. There will undoubtedly be entire books dedicated to how life has begun to resemble art in this manner. In terms of practicality, the United States will have assured its survival as a free society and the dominating superpower by becoming the first to create a true warfighting capability beyond the Earth's atmosphere. This truth should bring reassurance to America's allies, though, because, by and large, American might has always been a force for good. However, America's adversaries should exercise prudence. Their potential to cause havoc is soon to be severely limited. No other country has or will have the capabilities that the SpaceX Starship will deliver for a long time. Is the US military's alleged relationship with SpaceX a good thing? What do you think the benefits or drawbacks are? Would like to know what you think in the comments section below.